Breaking news coming out today, October the 21st, 2025, as take a look at the latest headlines with me. The Trump-Putin summit off after Russia rejects the ceasefire proposal. Take a look. Trump-Putin meeting canceled after Russia insists goal to conquer Ukraine has not changed. You can see this coming out just a couple of hours ago. In addition to that, exclusive, Russia reiterates previous Ukraine peace terms to the United States, and a private communication sources say, as they're saying, nothing has changed. Russia is still seeking to conquer Ukraine. The peace talks that we are seeing the United States make an effort to do, Donald Trump, they're saying this has not changed anything with Russia. And we have heard that there was an attempt, take a look at this, coming out today as well. Plans for Trump-Putin meeting shelved days after Budapest talks proposed. It was proposed to have a second summit. They're saying now just cancel it, put it off the table. There is no reason to move forward with this. Now, we're also hearing that the lack of decision on the Tomahawks made Russia less keen on diplomacy, Zelensky says. You can see this coming out today as well. 4 hours ago, he's saying because the United States did not give Ukraine those Tomahawk missiles, as a result, Russia has been emboldened. Let me know, do you agree? Should the United States have given Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine? If you think so, put yes. If you think no, put no. Many saying that if they would have done that, it would have escalated the war. Russia even saying, if you do this, it will take the war to a whole new level. Trump did not provide those Tomahawks as of yet. That's not set in stone. And now Zelensky is saying because of that decision, that is the reason why Russia is not agreeing to peace talks. Let me know. Yes, should the United States give Tomahawks to Ukraine, or no, they should not? Put it in the comments for me and take a look at this. U.S.-made Tomahawk is a tried and tested missile, but it's out of Ukraine's reach for now. We're going to see if that changes. Now, also, Poland arrests suspected saboteurs amid fears of Russian hybrid warfare, as we're hearing things are escalating with Russia and NATO. And that is because, take a look at this, Russia does not believe NATO will enact Article 5. Military expert says this come on out in the last 24 hours. They're saying, Russia is saying, you're bluffing. We don't care what you say, NATO. We're not scared of you, and we think that you will not act. You're not going to initiate Article 5. Do you think that NATO should initiate Article 5? If you think so, drop a 5. If you think no, put a 4. A lot of people saying if Article 5 is initiated, that is going to equate to World War III. Global conflict worldwide with NATO, the United States, Russia, likely China, Taiwan, Iran, all the nations getting pulled into this simultaneously, equating to World War III global conflict. Let me know your thoughts. Should they initiate that Article 5? We're hearing that Russia is saying, we don't even think you're going to do it. We think you're bluffing. Now, I'm going to share with you the latest video footage and articles coming out today. I'm going to share with you the video footage of Donald Trump in the White House today, talking about what's unfolding with Russia, the latest developments as of today, October the 21st, 2025, this new development coming out, that the peace talks, the summits that Trump was trying to put together, it is totally off. And we've actually heard Trump the past couple of days vocalize that he's been very shocked at what's unfolded with Russia and Ukraine. He thought that this was going to be a quick fix. Putin was on board, but he kept changing things up. Then they brought in that Tomahawk missile element, which shifted the entire conversation. Russia getting very on edge with that. We saw Zelensky come to the White House last week, and after that meeting, they did not receive those Tomahawks, and as a result, we're seeing things have shifted yet again, with Russia now saying all peace talks are off the table. Nothing has changed with our conquest over Ukraine. We're going to move forward, and we also don't think that NATO is going to do anything about it. We're just going to keep on doing what we're doing. So a lot developing on this front here, and let me know your thoughts. Where are we going to be heading towards? War or peace? What is the direction? It seems like we were getting kind of close to maybe some sort of peace talk agreement, but now we're hearing that no, it's off the table, and it looks like it's going back to war. Every single day, it seems like there is some sort of shift in the conversation and things are changing. We will see. I will keep you up to date, but let me know what you think is on the horizon for the conflict with Russia, Ukraine, the United States, NATO. Is it war or peace? Drop it in the comments. Now, while you're dropping those comments so I can see your thoughts on everything that's taking place, do me a favor. take a quick second, hit that thumbs up like button if you appreciate the updates. Here on the channel, I cite all the sources. I'm going to put it on the screen, read right from it, play for you the video footage. I also hyperlink all of my sources so you can see the dates and where they're coming from in the description. Cite all my sources, hold myself accountable to my community viewing these videos so you know this is the latest. And if you want to stay up to date, it's totally free. Hit that subscribe button, turn on that notification bell. So we're going to dive right in, get you caught up on everything. And also wanted to mention, for those of you that have been interested in investments, my friends over at Lear Capital, they have free information down below. And if you've been following silver, you've been seeing it hitting all-time new highs. It slipped a little bit, but there are still those that are saying that right now it could go up to $100 per ounce. And if you don't want to miss out on that, they're saying it could still double from where it's at. You might want to look into it. Just do your research. Make sure you do your due diligence before you invest in anything. My friends over at Lear Capital can give you free information, a quick phone call, 20 minutes, speaking to a real person at 1-800-411-2430, or go to learram.com. Can get you all the information you need if you're thinking about diversifying your portfolio, trying to take advantage of some of the shifts that are happening in the market. And if you think that there is uncertainty right now, gold and silver, precious metals have held tried and true over the years. Check them out, my friends over at Lear Capital. Thank you for making that available to my viewing audience today. But with that being said, let's start off with some video footage. Hit that like button, subscribe, and let's take a look at what's going on so you get caught up on the latest breaking. This video footage from ABC coming out in just the past hour.
Also, as you know, preparations now for a summit between President Trump and Russian President Putin have been called off. The White House releasing a statement today saying that there are no plans for Trump and Putin to meet again in the immediate future. The Kremlin downplaying the idea of a second summit. A spokesperson for Putin saying you can't postpone what was not scheduled. This all comes just days after Trump met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who is pushing for additional U.S. military aid. For more on all of this, let's discuss with our ABC News' Christian Cordero. So, Christian, first of all, what exactly is happening here? And what does it mean for the president's, especially President Trump's, patience? Might be running out with Russia, do we think?
Well, it's at the very least being tested, and it very well, Kana, could be running thin. That summit that was in the works between President Trump and Vladimir Putin was postponed after a phone call today between Secretary of State Marco Rubio and his Russian counterpart, Sergei Lavrov. The joint statement appeared diplomatic, but it followed a statement from the Kremlin that basically said, summit? What summit? And verbatim, you just said it. They said that they can't postpone what was not scheduled. And as these on again, off again talks kind of keep mulling in the background, it is just the latest example of a peace deal that appears no closer to being accomplished today than it was really just months ago. Despite that summit that you see right there in Alaska in August, when President Trump rolled out the red carpet for Vladimir Putin, they met under this banner that said pursuing peace. There were threats of sanctions if Putin right then and there did not agree to a ceasefire, or at the very least a trilateral meeting between President Trump and President Zelensky. None of that has happened, and there have been no consequences since. In fact, today Lavrov said that he does not support a ceasefire because he says it does not address the root causes of the war. A reminder, Russia invaded Ukraine more than 3.5 years ago, sparking that war that has intensified only in recent months. Kana.
Right, certainly a tremendous amount of scrutiny in the aftermath of that Alaskan summit. But also, what does this mean, Christian, for the talks about those American-made Tomahawk missiles that Ukraine has been wanting?
Yeah, that also appears to be on ice, or at least not progressing the way that it seemed like it was even just a week ago. You remember President Trump and the administration overall seemed open to the idea of sending American-made Tomahawks to Ukraine in support for their asks for security guarantees. Those can travel well into Russian territory, some, more than 1,000 kilometers. I believe I have the exact number somewhere. But it's something that President Putin really opposed, and he was able to get ahead of President Zelensky's visit to the White House, where they were expected to and did in fact discuss those Tomahawks. Putin spoke with Trump for about 2 hours before Zelensky's arrival and had the opportunity to try his best to talk him out of it. And now its fate seems uncertain. Kana.
Well, we apparently will not be seeing another summit between President Trump and Vladimir Putin anytime soon. They were talking about meeting in Hungary, but those plans now on hold. State Department and Foreign Policy correspondent Jillian Turner is live at the State Department. Jillian, good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you, Trey. So the Trump-Putin Summit 2.0 is off, at least for now, though this is the Trump administration, anything could happen. But for now, we are learning that something appears to have gone down in a phone call Secretary of State Marco Rubio had with his Russian counterpart yesterday. Nobody is going to Budapest, as originally was in the works. A senior administration official is telling us, quote, take a look. Secretary Rubio and Foreign Minister Lavrov had a productive call. Therefore, an additional in-person meeting between the Secretary and Foreign Minister is not necessary, and there are no plans for President Trump to meet with President Putin in the near future. Now, earlier today in Moscow, Lavrov said publicly that the Russian position has not budged since the first Trump-Putin summit in Alaska 2 months ago. Take a listen.
Russia has not changed its position compared to the understandings reached during the extensive negotiations between Putin and Trump in Alaska.
Translation here, Lavrov is saying there will not be a ceasefire in Ukraine until after a peace agreement is reached between the two sides. Russia is going to continue its assault inside the country. Now, yesterday during a meeting with Australia's leader at the White House, President Trump said he still thinks Ukraine could prevail in Putin's war, though he did sound less convinced of this than he was 3 weeks ago.
They could still win it. I don't think they will, but they could still win it. I never said they would win it. I said they could win. Anything can happen. You know, war is a very strange thing. A lot of bad things happen, a lot of good things happen.
Well, the president is obviously right on that front. We are now learning, just into the newsroom, Trace, that NATO Secretary General is en route to the United States. He is going to meet with President Trump, maybe doing some post-damage assessment here.
Jillian Turner, live for us at the State Department. We'll get back to you as the news warrants. Jillian, thank you.
Hey,
There you have it, you guys. Now, again, both of those coming out from Fox News and ABC in just the past hour, as we're hearing that these talks are off and that Putin has said nothing has changed. And Zelensky is blaming the lack of U.S. Tomahawks for the reason why Putin is calling off all peace, and we're hearing things are escalating. Now, we're going to be seeing where this goes, and we're going to be taking a look at the articles in more detail here in just a second, but I want to play for you what it was that Trump had to say in the White House today. Now, I'm going to play for you this first question that comes from one of the reporters. Then after that, a little bit later on, a couple of other questions specifically on the Russia-Ukraine conflict, so you can see it for yourself coming out today from President Donald Trump. Let's go ahead and take a look.
Mr. President, the meeting with Vladimir Putin is canceled or put on hold. Do you know what happened there, and does that affect your decision whether or not to send Tomahawks?
No, I don't want to have a wasted meeting. I don't want to have a waste of time, so I'll see what happens. But we did all of these great deals, great peace deals. They're all peace deals, agreements, solid agreements, every one of them. But this one, and I said, go to the line of battle, the battlefield lines, and you pull back and you go home, and everybody takes some time off, because you got two countries that are killing each other. You got two countries that are losing 5,000 to 7,000 soldiers a week. So we'll see what happens. It's we haven't made a determination.
What changed your mind after talking to Vladimir Putin between then and now? Why did you think that a Budapest summit might be wasted time?
Well, I didn't say anything. I didn't say it would, and you never know what's going to happen. But a lot of things are happening on that front, on the war front, with Ukraine and Russia, and we'll be notifying you over the next 2 days as to what we're doing.
Did you hear
a lot of things are happening.
Did you hear something from the
We're going to get it solved. Yeah, please.
Mr. President, on Ukraine, do you still see a chance for a ceasefire? And what is Putin asking for? Do you still see a chance for a ceasefire? And what is Putin asking for?
I do. It's a vicious look. It's a vicious war. It doesn't really affect us. We sell equipment to them. We sell equipment to NATO. And NATO gives it to Ukraine, but we don't pay anything anymore. Biden spent $350 billion. The war would have never happened if I were president. Would have never, not even a million years. And Putin knows that too. Would have never happened. But it did happen, and I came in, and I have to see if I can put it out. But it doesn't affect us, because we're not losing soldiers there. Although, when I first came in, that could have ended up, it's not going to happen, but it could have ended up in World War III. That was really out of control. So now it's they're shooting and they're killing people, and I think Putin wants it to end, and I think Zelensky wants it to end, and I think it's going to end.
What is that rumors that he reached out to you about meeting on the government shutdown? Will you meet with him before you leave for Asia?
So there you have it, you guys. Now, let me know your thoughts on this. Donald Trump said that we were on the precipice of World War III with everything that was going on with Joe Biden in charge. If you agree and you appreciate the way that Donald Trump has been handling things, drop a 47 in the comments. Hit that like button for me. Looks like we just need 18 more likes if you haven't done so yet to hit 500 while we're live. But drop those 47s for support for Donald Trump. Now, if you disagree with him, you don't like the way Trump has been handling things, and you don't think that we were on the precipice of World War III under the Biden administration, drop a 46 for Joe Biden. But I believe there's probably going to be a lot of 47s in the comments. Let me know your thoughts. I'd like to see what people think while we are live. Now, I've got more video footage and articles we're going to be taking a look at here. But first, let's take a look at this one coming out now. It says Trump-Putin summit off after Russia rejects the ceasefire proposal. The leaders were expected to meet in the next 2 weeks, but a call between ministers broke down because of the Kremlin's maximalist demands over Ukraine. You can see this coming out today, Tuesday, October the 21st. All of these articles, these updates, these videos coming out today, the 21st, with these updates pouring in. Now, the White House has said that there are no plans for President Donald Trump and President Putin to meet in the immediate future after the Kremlin has rejected an American proposal to freeze the conflict along the present front lines. The U.S. president was expected to hold a second face-to-face meeting with Putin aimed at ending the war in Ukraine after the two leaders' summit in August in Alaska. It was thought that the talks would take place within the next 2 weeks in Budapest. However, the plans for the summit have collapsed after a call between Marco Rubio and U.S. Secretary of State and Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, on Monday yesterday, during which the Kremlin refused to budge from its maximalist demands. So they're saying after that call yesterday, we are now hearing that this is off. A White House official said Secretary Rubio and Foreign Minister Lavrov had a productive call. Therefore, an additional in-person meeting between the secretary and the foreign minister is not necessary, and there are no plans for the President Donald Trump to meet with the President Putin in the immediate future. Ukraine's President Zelensky accused Putin of trying to weasel out of peace negotiations. He urged Trump to reconsider the decision not to give those Tomahawk long-range missiles to Ukraine as soon as the issue of long-range capabilities for Ukraine became less immediate. Russia's interest in diplomacy faded almost automatically, the Ukrainian president said in his nightly address. This signals that this very issue, the issue of our deep strike capabilities, may hold the indispensable key to peace. The greater Ukraine's long-range reach, the greater Russia's willingness to end the war. Now, Rubio and Lavrov were due to have an in-person meeting this week to discuss the details of the Hungary summit, but the meeting has been suspended after a call on Monday failed to deliver progress, and that was yesterday. The call between Rubio and Lavrov appears to have broken down because the Russian foreign wanted to discuss the root causes of the war rather than accept Trump's ceasefire proposal. During his 2.5-hour call with Trump last Thursday, Putin demanded that Ukraine surrender the entirety of the Donbass, the coal mining region of eastern Ukraine that Russia has failed to conquer in 11 years. However, Zelensky was able to convince Trump to push for a ceasefire based on the existing front lines rather than swapping territory after a heated White House meeting on Friday, during which Trump was reported to have resorted to expletives and tossed aside maps of Ukraine. Now, on Tuesday, Lavrov questioned why an immediate ceasefire had suddenly become a topic of discussion again. He said an immediate ceasefire in Ukraine would mean only one thing: most of it would remain under Nazi rule. Sergei Rybakov, the Russian deputy foreign minister, said there was still preparation to be done before a meeting could take place between Rubio and Lavrov. You can't postpone something that was never agreed upon, he said. We had no understanding of the timing or the place for such a contact. The idea exists, of course, and it's an important one, but it requires preparation. That's what we're doing. Now, on Friday, Zelensky is expected to attend a meeting of the Coalition of the Willing in London as he tries to rally European support. European allies will discuss a 12-point peace plan similar to the one agreed in Gaza, according to Bloomberg. Now, the ceasefire would be based upon the current front lines. Once the fighting stops, the two sides would exchange prisoners, and Russia would release children abducted from Ukraine to build trust. Now, when this is established, the two sides would enter negotiations. The plan would be overseen by a peace board chaired by Donald Trump. So right now, that is where things currently stand. However, we are hearing that the current talks between Russia and the United States to broker a deal between Russia and Ukraine, it is off the table. They have fallen apart. Now, we're going to see where we go from here. You saw the video footage of Donald Trump today, but we're hearing that right now Putin is rejecting the calls for this ceasefire agreement. Let's take a look at some more video footage so you can see all the latest that has been coming out today in just the past hour.
Turning now to the war in Ukraine. The Kremlin has rejected President Trump's proposal to freeze the war at the current front lines. Victoria Coates joining me now, a security expert. Victoria, okay, what happens now? Does Zelensky have to give up some more land to get Putin to talk peace?
Well, good to be with you, Stuart. This is, I think, a very bad move on Vladimir Putin's part. President Trump has given him every option to come to the table, to get to a diplomatic resolution. I think freezing the lines to get to a ceasefire was a very reasonable proposal, and we had also a meeting on the table for Secretary Rubio and Minister Lavrov, and that could have made some more progress, too. But for Putin to reject this means he is the one who's on the wrong side of peace. President Trump just brokered that ceasefire in the Middle East that Trey was just reporting on. It is holding against all odds, but Putin is the one who's not coming to the table, who won't get to a deal. So I would look to the president to start to put some more very strong economic pressure on Putin to force him to the table.
You say it would be economic pressure, like forcing Russia's friends and allies not to buy Russian oil. But you don't mean providing those Tomahawk missiles, right? That would be a military option.
Well, I think we would start with the economic option. President Trump is always very careful to keep leverage in his pocket, if you will, so he has additional steps to take short of something cataclysmic. And in this case, the economic card has not been played. Yesterday, Stuart, the European Union announced with great fanfare that they were going to wean themselves off Russian gas by 2028. Yeah. We are looking at the 4th anniversary of this war in a couple of months. They haven't gotten themselves off Russian gas. That's where we have to start, is with our European partners and allies, because this war is in Europe. They have to end this. So that's the perfect place to start.
But they can't just cut off Russian gas just like that. Winter's coming in Europe. If they just cut off Russian gas, well, where would they buy it from?
It's coming for the 4th time since this war started, and they've taken no steps in 4 years to do something about this. So I think they can import more U.S. gas. That was part of the trade deal with the EU. We are producing in record amounts. We also have a glut of Middle East oil on the market. We have shipments that aren't finding buyers. They can buy that gas and oil. So this is eminently possible for them to do, but they have no sense of urgency because the Biden administration turned a blind eye to it for years. And so I think that's where the president can really turn up the pressure.
Victoria, the Kremlin is saying that Russia is prepared to expand ties with Iran in all areas. That sounds like, to me, it's a bit like desperation for Russia, because Iran is flat on its back and bitterly divided.
Indeed. And this is a very interesting kind of 3-way, maybe 4-way partnership under the direction of China with Russia, Iran, and to some extent North Korea. And they've all kind of banded together into a new version of the axis of evil. And it is a danger to the United States. But at the same time, as you point out, all of these countries have systemic economic problems. It's not like Iran has all that much to offer Russia or vice versa. So I think this is a place where you could maybe do, kill 2 birds with 1 stone, if you will. Maximum pressure on Iran can also be maximum pressure on Russia, both of them hugely dependent on their energy exports. Maybe the president needs a new czar to just spend all their time tracking their shipments and cutting them off.
Maybe so. Victoria Coates, always a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Fox News alert, we learned just a short time ago through the White House that there will be no plans in the near future for President Trump to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin. This fresh off of a meeting and a productive call, it was described, between Secretary Rubio and Foreign Minister Lavrov. Brent Sadler is joining us now, a retired Navy captain, former Pentagon official and senior fellow at the Heritage Foundation. Thank you very much for joining us, Brent. This was determined that it was a productive call, we are told. Therefore, an additional in-person meeting between the two leaders is not necessary. What is your reaction to that?
Well, if the summit meeting between Putin and Trump is off, then I think it was pretty clear the Russians were buying for time and doing a replay of stringing along President Trump, and that's certainly not a meeting worth taking between the two leaders.
Okay, so how are we supposed to interpret this, especially based on what we learned after the fact, that it was Russian President Vladimir Putin who called President Trump for that lengthy phone call at the White House?
Yeah, President Putin in Moscow certainly doesn't want to see secondary sanctions. That was the trigger for him getting on an airplane to go to Alaska, and he was successful because he basically blunted that hit. But now the threat is of additional weapons going to Ukraine that actually could exasperate his wartime efforts on the battlefield, talking about Tomahawks, but also Iran missiles making the way to Ukraine. So, of course, he's going to make a call, and he's willing to get on a plane again, perhaps to go meet Trump somewhere in Europe, to try to delay again. Until the Russians make meaningful sacrifices on the battlefield, like stopping the fighting, stopping the strikes, then I think things might change in a real way that make a meeting more worthwhile.
Okay, so we're waiting on the White House description of this call and any details from it that led to this announcement that the meeting is off, Brent. But Lavrov today held I believe this was some sort of press conference that he delivered, and he said Russia has not changed its position compared to the understandings reached during the extensive negotiations between Putin and Trump in Alaska. So Russia has not changed its positions compared to the understandings reached in that meeting or the negotiations that Putin and Trump then had in Alaska. That's also brand new detail. Your takeaway from that?
That confirms that Putin was interested in continuing to string things along and buying for time. The weather is turning against the military operations as the changing season there, and you get heavy rains and it turns into a giant mud pit. So their military operations are going to slow down anyway. But they're trying to beg for time in order to make up more ground and make their negotiating position stronger in any type of ceasefire. And it was pretty clear now, as more and more details are coming in, the administration wasn't going to have any of it. It's not worth the time to meet. But until economic sanctions on the benefactors to Moscow, like China and India, they're not going to see much pressure or compellence to get Putin to the table.
Well, there you go. All right. A productive call, it was described, for as far as the details we've learned so far. We'll see where all this goes next. Brent, appreciate you joining us on the breaking news.
There you have it, you guys. The breaking news coming out today, October the 21st, 2025, is that the talks are off. Putin has said we are not going to be moving forward with this. As I said, the headlines coming out in the past couple of hours, the summit is off, rejecting the ceasefire. Today, Tuesday, October the 21st, we're hearing that Russia is saying moving forward is a no-go. Trump-Putin meeting canceled after Russia insists their goal to conquer Ukraine. It has not changed. Russia reiterates previous Ukrainian peace terms to the United States in a private communication, sources say. And let's take a look at this one from the BBC. Plans for Putin-Trump meeting shelved days after the Budapest talks proposed, as we were going to have a Budapest meeting with the two. They're saying it's off, and you can see this coming out just in the past 4 hours with the updates today. Very briefly here, before we move on to Tomahawks, there are no plans for Donald Trump to meet Vladimir Putin in the immediate future. A White House official has stated the U.S. president said last Thursday that he and his Russian counterpart would hold talks in Budapest. So last week, we heard that was going to be unfolding within 2 weeks to discuss the war in Ukraine. That has changed today in the past couple of hours. A preparatory meeting between the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov was due to be held this week, but the White House has said that the two had had a productive call and that a meeting was no longer necessary. And again, that unfolded yesterday. The White House did not share any more details on why the talks had been put on hold. But as you saw there from the video footage coming out from Donald Trump today, a couple of hours ago in the White House, he said, there's no need to waste our time. Not going to waste time on something that isn't going to materialize with the way Russia currently is standing. But the key differences between the U.S.'s proposals and Russia's conditions for peace became increasingly clear this week and appear to have dashed chances of a summit between the two presidents. Trump had discussed a Budapest summit over the phone with Putin a day before meeting Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky at the White House. Some reports suggested those talks had been a shouting match, with sources suggesting that Trump had pushed Zelensky to give up large areas of territory in the eastern regions of Donetsk and Luhansk, known collectively as the Donbass, as part of a deal with Russia. However, Zelensky has always said that Ukraine cannot relinquish the parts of the Donbass that it still holds, on the grounds that Russia could later use the area as a springboard for further attacks. Now, on Monday, yesterday, Trump embraced a ceasefire proposal backed by Kiev and European leaders to freeze the conflict on the current front lines. Let it be cut the way it is, he said. I said, cut and stop at the battle line. Go home. Stop fighting. Stop killing people. Russia has repeatedly pushed back against freezing the current line of contact. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said the idea had been put to the Russians repeatedly, but that the consistency of Russia's position does not change, referring to Moscow's insistence on the complete withdrawal of Ukrainian troops from the embattled eastern regions. Moscow was only interested in long-term sustainable peace, Sergei Lavrov said on Tuesday, implying that freezing the line would only amount to a temporary ceasefire. Now, here's a map. You can see the current conditions right now as they stand. You can see the red is the front line. You can see where it goes through those 4 different territories, and you can see it cutting through what they said is known as the Donbass, which they're saying they will not agree to freezing at this front line. And so both sides are saying it's not going to happen. Now, the root causes of the conflict needed to be addressed, Lavrov said, using Kremlin shorthand for a series of maximalist demands that include the recognition of full Russian sovereignty over the Donbass, as well as the demilitarization of Ukraine, a non-starter for Kiev and its European partners. Now, earlier on Tuesday, European leaders put out a statement with Zelensky saying that any talks of ending the war in Ukraine should start with freezing the current front line, and accused Russia of not being serious about peace. Russia saying it's not going to happen. Trump and Putin last met in Alaska in August during a hastily organized summit which yielded no concrete results. The White House decision to shelve plans for a second Trump-Putin meeting may have been an attempt to avoid another similar scenario. I guess the Russians wanted too much, and it became evident for the Americans that there will be no deal for Trump in Budapest, a senior European diplomat told Reuters. Zelensky said discussions about the front line were the beginning of diplomacy, which Russia was doing everything to avoid. The only topic that could make Moscow pay attention was the supply of long-range weapons to Ukraine, he added. Putin's unscheduled call with Trump last Thursday came following speculation that the U.S. was preparing to send long-range Tomahawk missiles to Kiev that could potentially strike deep into Russia. Zelensky said that it was the Tomahawks issue that had forced Russia to engage in discussions. Despite coming away from the White House empty-handed, he added that the talk about the missiles had turned out to be a strong investment in diplomacy. Wow, there you have it, you guys, and let me know your thoughts. Should the United States give those long-range Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine as they are requesting? As they have said, that is what brought Russia to the table. And they are also saying the fact that Trump is not going to be giving them now, he said he did not give a firm yes to it, and at the moment is saying no, is what is now emboldening Russia about 24 hours later. And take a look at this headline. That's exactly what's coming out today in the past 4 hours. Lack of a decision on the Tomahawks made Russia less keen on diplomacy, Zelensky has said today, October 21st, 2025. And let me know, should the U.S. give Tomahawks to Ukraine? If you think so, put yes. If you think no, put no. I've heard opposing opinions on both of this. Some that say yes, give it to Ukraine, then Russia will go ahead and come to the negotiation table. They are sweating right now. If Ukraine gets those, we heard Zelensky already threaten, the moment we get those U.S.-made missiles, those Tomahawks, Russia better find their bomb shelters, their underground bomb shelters, because we're going to be sending those Tomahawk missiles right into Moscow where Putin is. To which we saw Russia respond and say, don't let Ukraine forget that Russia has nuclear bombs, warheads, missiles, that your bomb shelters, your underground bomb shelters, your bunkers will not protect you from. And they also said, let the people of America remember this as well, threatening the United States as well, saying if you supply those Tomahawk missiles, we're going to be holding the U.S. accountable as well. So let me know your thoughts. Should the United States supply Tomahawks to Ukraine? If you think so, put yes. If you think no, put no. Let me know those thoughts in the comments. Also, if you haven't hit the like button yet, if you could do so, if you appreciate the live stream, we just need, looks like 50 more likes to hit 900 while we're live. But let's take a look at this article coming out here from CNN that says the U.S.-made Tomahawks is a tried and tested missile, but it is out of Ukraine's reach for now. This coming out in the last 24 hours, and it says the Tomahawk is the workhorse of the United States missile arsenal. It's been deployed in strikes in Syria and Libya and was used extensively against the former dictator Saddam Hussein's regime in Iraq in both the 1990s and in 2003. About 30 of the cruise missiles were used as a part of the U.S. strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities in June. Now, while not new, the Tomahawk remains effective and relatively cheap at $2 million per missile. Depending on the variant, it can strike targets at a range of between 1,600 to 2,500 kilometers or 1,000 to 1,600 miles, and that is why this is so dangerous for Russia. It is because it puts Moscow in reach of Ukraine. That is not much greater than some of Ukraine's long-range drones, but the Tomahawk would pack a far higher explosive punch. It has sophisticated guidance technologies and travels at high subsonic, about 550 mile-per-hour speeds. It also flies low, literally hugging the contours of the land, making it harder to detect and harder to intercept. Now, for all of these reasons, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has lobbied the Trump administration for the delivery of Tomahawks that could enable Ukraine to strike targets deep inside of Russia. For now, at least, he's not going to get them. Trump made clear last week that the U.S. has few to spare, saying, we need Tomahawks for the United States of America too. We have a lot of them, but we need them. As we have seen in this war of attrition, with the F-16 fighter jets, Abrams tanks, and even Patriot missile batteries supplied to Ukraine, no single system is a game changer. Hundreds of Tomahawks would be needed to cripple Russia's refineries and air bases. Even so, a few dozen could enable the Ukrainian military to inflict substantial damage on key Russian infrastructure far from its borders, including the Shahad drones factory in the Tatarstan and the Engels 2 Air Base in Saratov Oblast, according to Washington-based think tank, the Institute for the Study of War. And you can see here the Tomahawk would enable missile strikes deep inside of Russia. And you can see here the extent, how far the range is for these Tomahawks. It goes well beyond what is needed, going well into Moscow, even beyond, further out, well past the borders. So this would be a game changer. Now you can see here the short-range ATACMS. They cannot quite reach Moscow, but those long-range Tomahawk missiles, they can go well far beyond. So this is very concerning to Vladimir Putin and Russia. It's very difficult just to operate with only the Ukrainian drones. We need long-range Tomahawks, Zelensky said in an interview with the U.S. network NBC on Sunday. He has also said that Tomahawks would strengthen Ukraine and force the Russians to sober up a little and sit down at the negotiating table. The Kremlin was so perturbed by the prospect of Kiev procuring Tomahawks that it issued dire warnings about an escalation of war. Given that the missile can carry nuclear warheads, Russia would perceive their supply to Ukraine as a hostile move that would threaten global security, according to the head of Foreign Intelligence Service, Sergei Naryshkin. And again, they said that their concern, we had heard them mention this, Russia, is that these Tomahawks also could carry those nuclear warheads, as mentioned here. So they're saying, do we know if the Tomahawk has a nuclear warhead? We don't. How are we supposed to respond to this if they fire these at us? Russian President Vladimir Putin sought to preempt the prospect in a lengthy call with Trump on the eve of Zelensky's visit to Washington on October 16th. The Tomahawk is certainly proven in combat. In 1991, when the U.S. and its allies sought to expel Iraqi forces from Kuwait, 122 Tomahawks were fired at Iraqi defenses in the opening 3 days of Operation Desert Storm, the first time that they had been used. It has also been used for precision strikes in the Balkans, Afghanistan in 1998, Yemen, Libya, and Syria. The latest version of the missile was introduced in 2021 with enhanced electronics and a greater range. So right now, there is a lot surrounding the use of these Tomahawks. We're hearing this is a game changer for the conflict that is going on. And right now, take a look at this. We're hearing that Russia is not really scared of anything except for, it seems, these Tomahawks. Poland arrests suspected saboteurs amid fears of Russian hybrid war. They're saying that Russia is invading airspace. They've got sabotage, espionage campaigns taking place not only in Ukraine, but various countries in NATO. We've been hearing Poland, Estonia, Romania, various countries concerned right now. And take a look, Russia's saying, we think you're bluffing on all of this. What are you going to do? You're not going to do anything. Russia does not believe that NATO will enact Article 5, military expert says. They're saying Russia is emboldened because they think that NATO is not willing to go to war with Russia. Let me know your thoughts. And a lot of people saying that if they do enact Article 5, that will be World War III. All the NATO nations will be going to war against Russia. Let me know your thoughts. Should they go that route? Let's take a look at this article here. Russia will bank on a split in NATO over whether to invoke the alliance's collective defense pledge, spurring it to stage a limited incursion into the alliance's eastern flank within 3 years, according to a prediction by Carlo Massala, a German military expert and politics professor. His book, If Russia Wins, a Scenario, speculates that the Russian Kremlin could make a move into Estonia as soon as 2028, because there are circles in Moscow who do not believe that every NATO member would back Article 5, which stipulates that an attack on one alliance member is an attack on all. Massala told Newsweek that this is because Moscow believes that some countries are not willing to fight Russia. And so Russia is saying they don't want any piece of Russia. Man, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Should they invoke Article 5? Let me know your thoughts. But you guys, I'm going to be sure to keep you up. But we're hearing right now, the latest is that the talks for peace have fallen apart. So right now, where we go from here is anybody's guess. It seems like things are changing day to day. But as the news rolls in, I'll be sure to let you know. It looked like we were potentially going to have peace talks with Russia and the United States brokering that deal so Ukraine and Russia could finally come to peace. But in the last 24 hours, actually just in the past couple of hours today, October the 21st, we're hearing Russia has said the talks are off. We're not going to have anything to do with this. Nothing has changed in our stance. We are moving forward with war. And we don't think NATO is going to do anything about it because they don't want any part of a conflict with Russia, and Russia flexing its nuclear power, its missile capabilities, threatening not only Ukraine but the United States. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. What's going to be unfolding here? War or peace? Is it going to be more war, or are we going to finally have peace? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. But like I said, as more news comes out, I'll be sure to share here on the channel, keep you up to speed on everything. Also, stay tuned because we're also hearing that the peace agreement between Israel and Hamas is being tested right now. It's very fragile as we're hearing that Hamas has attacked Israel. Israel has attacked back. Hamas broke the agreement, not offering up all of the bodies and actually saying, we don't have them. We have to search for them. Israeli families of those hostages that have passed, very upset, saying, why did we enter into agreements when they don't have the bodies of our loved ones? We don't have closure. That's still going on, and we are still in a government shutdown. Congress has not come to an agreement, so we're still waiting to see what's going to be unfolding with that. We're hearing that we are at the third longest in U.S. history. I think the longest on record was 31 or 35 days, can't remember. We've now been in this one for 21 days. And in fact, thank you for all the well wishes on the traveling. As you guys know, me and the family were away in D.C., just doing a little family trip. While we were there, all the Smithsonians were closed. The public bathrooms were closed. Everything's shut down right now because of the government shutdown. All the federal facilities were closed. So we're going to see where we go from here. Now, I'll keep you up to speed on all of that. And as news comes out, I'll be sure to share right away. But that is the latest, you guys. Thank you so much for joining me. Again, hit that like button, subscribe to stay up to date, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care. God bless.